Okay, hello everyone. This is a Blender tutorial on how to make your own low poly terrain for your game. Now this video will be split into three parts, and the first part will be scene navigation. So it'll be going over how to move around in Blender and all that. Yeah, this is mainly for beginners and stuff who haven't actually used Blender much before. If you have used Blender and you do know like the basics of like movement and whatnot, then you can pretty much just skip forward. But for the beginners, I think it's a good idea just to watch this first little bit. And anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so when you load up your default Blender scene, you should just see this cube, the camera, and the light source. Okay, so to move around your scene, you want to hold down middle mouse and move the mouse around to orbit. Hold down shift and middle mouse to pan across like this, and you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out of your scene like that. Alright, so the view commands are pretty much just preset views to get precise angles or views onto a certain object that you've selected. So all the hotkeys for the view commands on the number pad. So if I press number 1, it'll move my view and take me to the y-axis, right? Or make me look along the y-axis. So the y-axis is this green line along here. If I press 3, it'll make me look along the x-axis, which is this red line. And if I press 7, that'll will give me a top-down view, which is along the z-axis here, this blue one. Now if I press 7 again, and if I press 9, it'll flip me over like that, so I look from the bottom instead of the top like I was before. This works for the other axes as well, so if I press 1, press 9, it'll flip me around. I'll still be looking down the same axis, just from a different side. I'll just be flipped over. Now, for the even numbers on the number pad, they move the view around in increments, like precise increments. All right. So if I press 2, it'll move me down a little bit, right, and 8 will move me up, and then 4 and 6 will turn me from side to side, just like that. Pressing 5 on the number pad will change between the orthographic and perspective zooms or views, so you can see the difference between orthographic and perspective. And pressing 0 will set the view to the camera. We aren't going to use this one because we're just going to make a terrain and then export it. We're not like rendering or lighting the scene or anyway. So this brings us to the next stage. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is remove everything in the scene already. So if you press the A key on your keyboard, you'll see that this yellow outline has disappeared, right? Which means that you've deselected the cube. Now if you press A again, you'll see that you've selected everything in the scene. So that's A for all, pretty much. And now to remove it, you press X, and then this little prompt will come up here. And it says delete. You just want to click that or press enter, and it will get rid of it for you. Okay, so now to create our plane, which will become our terrain, you want to hold shift and press the A key to bring up this little add menu, right? And so you can add all these little things like meshes and curves and cameras and lamps, etc. But for now we're just going to add a mesh. So if you hover the cursor along the mesh, you'll see this other menu come up, and you just want to click on the plane, and it'll bring up this little flat 2D shape. Now if you press the S key and drag your mouse out, you'll increase the size. I'm going to increase it to about the size of the grid. Okay, so next you want to press tab on your keyboard, which will bring you into edit mode. So you can see down here in the little mode selection, if you press tab again, you're in object mode. press tab again, you're in edit mode. So edit mode allows you to change physical properties of whatever you've selected. So if you press W while in edit mode, it'll come up with a special menu. And right at the top, there'll be an option called subdivide. So click on that. And then down here, under the subdivide menu, it'll have number of cuts. We're going to want to change that to about 100. So you'll see that there's 100 cuts on either side of the plane. And once that's done, you can press tab again to go back to the object mode. Okay, so now that you're in sculpt mode, you'll notice that this table over here has changed, and there's this red circle around the cursor. So whichever vertex is within this red circle will get pushed or pulled depending on what the settings are around here. So if you just hold left click and move around, you'll notice that you'll be able to sculpt like the terrain, and you'll also see that it's a mirror along the x-axis here. So if you hold control and press Z, you'll undo whatever you just did last. And we want to disable the symmetry, so we'll go into the symmetry lock tab, open that drop down, and untick the X mirror. So now if you go around like this, it won't mirror it onto the other side. So press Control Z again. You can close this drop down now. So you notice that if you go around like this, it doesn't really give much of a low poly effect. So to enable a nice low poly effect, you can go into the Done Topo tab here and just tick that. And you'll notice that the ground sort of becomes lighter. But if you start to sculpt along here like that, you'll see that it gives this cool low poly effect. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the settings a little bit here. So up here, you have rad 35 pixels, right? This is short for radius, so that's how big the brush is. So we want to increase the radius a little bit, and you'll get a bigger brush. You know, change the size of the effect area. Control Z to undo that. Set this back down a little bit more. Oops, too much. Yeah, that will do, I reckon. Then we have strength down here. So the more strength, the more powerful the brush will become. So if we set the strength up, you'll see that it creates the mountains a lot faster. Strength down more, it'll take longer to actually form a mountain. This is good for like precise or flat ground, just like that. So we're going to set that back to 500. Oops, sorry, 0.5. And then you have the add and subtract tools. So add, of course, would be adding clay to the thing essentially, and subtracting will be taking it away. So we can make like a river or something through here like that, or like a valley or something. And I'm going to begin sculpting. Okay, so I just finished making this low poly terrain here. It looks pretty good. Has a lot of like potential for a game map. Like for example, you could have like a village or town over here, maybe like a watchtower or something up on this rock formation, a lake in this area. Got a couple mountains here. Yeah, it looks pretty good. One thing that's a bit off about it is the polygon size consistency. Alright, so what I mean by that is that around here, you can see that some of the triangles are a bit smaller compared to, say, the ones up on this mountain here. And this is from a certain setting in the dynamic topography setting here, where if you zoom in a lot, you'll see that when you start painting on clay, the polygons are quite small. However, if you zoom out, they appear to be quite large. This is just fixed from one simple setting. So if you look into here, if you open up the Dyn Topo tab, you'll see a drop down here that has relative detail on it. You want to click that and select constant. So that will change one size for the polygons when you make them. This will change the consistency a lot, so it looks like a lot nicer. So start painting now, you'll see that they're the same size to the ones that would be painted on over here, like that. You can change the actual size of each polygon. So if you increase the resolution, they become smaller. They become smaller out here as well. If you decrease the resolution, then they become more coarse. So 15 is a pretty good number. That's one that that's like all along here. So another way to make your terrain look really nice is by using different brushes. Okay, so what I mean by that is you can close this drop down now, but up here you just have the sculpt drawing brush, right? You can get different ones of those. So if you click on the brush tab, it'll come up with all these brushes that you can use. These are just for sculpting like certain meshes mainly, so a lot of these won't be very effective for making terrains and stuff, but I'll just go through a couple that are like really fun to use and give some really nice effects. So I'll first look at the grab one. So what this does, it grabs and moves polygons or vertices that in your field of selection. So say if I want to make this ridge bigger, I would increase my radius a little bit, and I'll just click and drag it, and that would increase certain sizes. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, so I can do that, for example. Okay, make this mountain a bit bigger, just like that. So another one is the F rotate. So this just rotates polygons that's within your brush. So say if I wanted to add some like erosion or something, or it's like just some flow to this rock formation here, I can just grab that and just turn it around like this, and you can see that it's got a different angle, but the triangles around it sort of flow in a certain direction. So if I control Z that, you can see how it's more blocky, but if I grab this and turn it, like I'm going to turn it the other way this time, so you can see that it kind of flows around like that. And this can have some really nice effects in certain areas. Like you can see around here, it flows around. It can look pretty nice. So I'm going to make it go the other way like that for this area. Might make this mountain swirl a little bit as well. Just like that. Looks pretty cool. Yeah, I think it looks alright. We might start doing some texturing now. To begin applying textures to the low poly terrain, first we need to get out of sculpt mode. So we do this by clicking sculpt mode and going into edit mode. So you'll see that there are these black lines that trace all along each edge. That's because at the moment I have the edge tool selected. You might have the vertex one or the face one selected, and you just change which one you have selected by clicking on either the vertex, edge, or face tool. So I'm going to leave the face tool on for now. I'm going to go over here and click on the material tab. And before I do anything, I'm going to change my render type to cycles render instead of blender render. And this will change my material menus. So I'm going to click on add new material, and you'll see everything light up white, because when you create a new material, every face gets automatically applied to that new material, and it's set to white right now, so everything's set to white. And so if we change this color, let's say we want to make it to like a nice green, you won't see much going on at the moment. this color will just be for when you actually render a scene. Open the drop down settings and you'll see this viewport color here. So we click that, then you hit the sampling color and just click the one that you already have before, and you can see that you now have the same color. We don't want the entire place to be green. We want to add some variations, like some rocks or something. I'm not too experienced in texturing or anything, so this is just how I would do it. I'm not too sure how to do like gradients or anything, but I'm just gonna quickly go through how to get some different colors. So say I wanted to change the color of this rock formation here. I can just go along and hold shift and right click to select multiple faces like this, but that will take a very long time. If I press C, it'll come up with this brush, and I can use the scroll wheel to change the size of the brush. And I can't move around while I'm doing this, so I'll just select all this. I can just paint it on pretty much. I'm going to select like all that. If I press enter, it'll still remain selected, and if I do it again, it'll add on to what I had before. It's a really handy way of selecting multiple faces. And once I have all the rocks selected, or whatever different material selected, I'm going to go up into the materials tab again and add a new material slot. So you'll see this come up, and I just press new, and you'll see nothing's really changed, even though they're both set to white. You need to press assign, and that'll assign whatever you've selected into the new material. So if I deselect just by pressing A, you can see that it's all white, kind of looks snowy. Just change that color just by going to the viewport color. I can get a sample, get like this for example. Oh, it's a little bit darker, but well, we can change the color to make it more of like a rocky texture, so be something more like that. Just gonna slide around, look for a nice color, change the brightness a little bit. That looks alright. And so you can keep doing that effect as many times as you want. Say that I wanted like this bit along here to be the same color as this rock. I could just select that like this, and then just make sure that I have this material assigned and assign it. And don't forget to change the actual color as well. So just like that. Okay, so now we're on to the final step, which is doing the UV mapping. So to do that, you have to go into edit mode, select the edge selection, and then press A to select all. And then you want to hit Control and E, and it'll bring up this edges menu, and you just want to press mark seam. And then you'll notice that all the edges in the mesh have this red outline on them, which means that they're marked as seams, which will come in handy when we're unwrapping our UVs. So next step is to go to the top right hand corner, and you'll drag out, click and drag, and you'll bring in this new window. And then we're going to go down here to this cube at the bottom left of the right window and select UV image editor, and it will come up with this blank looking grid here. Next you want to hover the cursor back over the first viewport, press A and press U, and it'll come up with the UV mapping window, and you just want to hit unwrap, and it might freeze a little bit. It'll just take a while to process. And so once that's done, you'll see that all the triangles have been mapped out onto the UV editor here. Okay, so we don't have to worry about putting in an image for the mapping or whatever, because we already did all the texturing with the materials. We're only really doing the UVs to make sure that we don't get any lighting errors in a game engine, because I know that I'm not too sure if this is for Unity as well, but I know that in Unreal Engine, when you export a mesh that doesn't have a UV, it doesn't like it at all, and it turns all black and get all these lighting errors and whatnot. So yeah, it's just better to get this all done with. So you can just drag this to the side. I like to have it open in case I need to change anything. But now you can go out of edit mode. If you go back in, it'll still have all the UVs saved. So now you can go in, save, and export. So now you're ready to save and export. So go into File. Remember to save as, or save if you haven't done that already. Go into Export. Now there's all these different file types here. I'm going to select FBX, and now I'm just going to call it like Blender Terrain Low Poly Video, like just something like that. And then hit Export FBX, and you're done. Thanks for watching.